At that time, Ardas was still under the care of his shaman father. They were the only two left, and their usual activities involved farming and helping others. Ardas said that during the years he spent with his father, he saw things that a child should not see. He added that in the early days of these experiences, he almost didn't sleep for a week. He nearly lost his mind back then. Fortunately, his father was always by his side, ready to offer help and advice. When he overcame this situation, it became normal for him to witness such events. He said that what really scared him was when he saw his father exorcise a spirit from one of their patients. It was a strange event, almost too hard to believe. If you have watched shows about exorcisms, that's what Ardas witnessed. As far as he can remember, the man his father helped had his head spin 3 times, but he did not die. Suddenly, the man developed wounds all over his body, and insects came out of his skin. This event gave Ardas a deep fear of what beings from the other side could do. At first, he thought they could only scare people, but he was wrong. Despite everything he experienced, he still believed in his father's abilities. As the days passed, by God's mercy, their life got better. Sometimes people came for consultations, but their ailments were not severe. He said if it was not because of being bewitched or stepping on a mound, it was easy for his father to cure, so he didn't pay much attention to it. However, a week before Holy Week, something bad happened. As far as he can remember, it was afternoon when a family arrived at their house while they were preparing to leave. Because of their arrival, their departure was delayed because his father noticed something. One of the children with the visitors seemed to have a heavy presence. Without a word, his father told him to get their things and bring them inside the house. His father didn't hesitate to postpone their plans. Following his father's advice, Ardas had no choice but to agree. When he entered the house with their things, he heard his father advising the family to come inside their house. Upon hearing this advice, he quickly prepared his father's items, including the librita and rosary. After laying the patient down, his father began to pray. He used Latin, waving his palm over the patient's face as he chanted. He said his father's actions were a way to blind the patient's face. As a shaman, he needed to be careful not to be countered by his enemies. After a few minutes of preparation, his father began to blow prayers onto the victim's forehead. He chanted purely verbatim, believing that the living word was more powerful when heard throughout the surroundings. A moment later, after his father uttered the last living word, the child began to act strangely. For an unknown reason, the child suddenly convulsed, repeatedly uttering strange words. Because of this, his father quickly placed a cross on the child's head while his chanting grew louder. Moments later, the child lost consciousness, allowing his father to give the right remedies. As peace returned to the surroundings, his father told the victim's family that the evil spirit would no longer trouble them. To ensure safety, he also gave them a medallion for their peace of mind. After his father explained this, he quickly told him to gather their things. He said they would continue their journey since the night was not yet deep. Upon hearing this, the family objected, as if their task was not yet done. Noticing this, his father quietly observed, giving the person a chance to speak. Seeing they were listening, the visitor began to speak about their true purpose. It wasn't the spirit you expelled that brought us here. We put it in the child so you wouldn't reject us. Manoy Berto, we've known you for a long time. We've heard many things about you. So when we couldn't control our problem anymore, we decided to come to you. Now, while we're talking, our family is in danger. Don't worry. We are also shamans. But we are facing a problem we cannot overcome, the old man confessed to them. He added that they had been searching for a solution for several days. Unfortunately, they couldn't find an answer. When they learned about Ardas' father, They had hope because they knew he had once faced the Aswang that had come to their place. Because of this, his father immediately asked what kind of Aswang the shamans were talking about. Hearing the elder's words, he slowly approached his father and whispered, "The race of the Agtaw. Didn't you defeat one before, Berto? Don't deny it. We know everything about you. He. That's also why we didn't introduce ourselves to you earlier." Hearing this, his father sighed and replied, "If you want to know the best way to defeat them, I'm ready to give it to you. That's all I can offer." After saying these words, the shamans he was talking to did not agree. They said they went through a lot of trouble just to meet Berto. They added that they were desperate for his help. So in any way, they were ready to do whatever it took to get his cooperation. After the old man said this, he immediately showed the bolo strap to his waist as part of his threat. Because of this, his father was forced to stay silent. At that point, if he added fuel to the fire, a conflict would surely arise. He didn't want that to happen, especially since they were all shamans and his father had long avoided trouble. After a few more minutes of talking to understand what was happening, he decided to listen to the shaman's side. When the visitors realized this, they began to tell the events in their place. According to the old man, in 1939, they were attacked by the Agtaw. These beings were led by a witch who was once an enemy of their clan. During the peak of the attack, a fierce battle erupted that shook their village. Their side did everything they could, but the Agtaw were cunning. Before the attack, they had studied their weaknesses. Because of this, their relatives fighting were quickly defeated. No matter what the shamans did, they were slowly killed by the Aswang. Realizing that they couldn't withstand the force, their high priest created a large barrier in the village that quickly separated their forces. The enchantments used were ancient, so the beings couldn't easily penetrate it. However, over the years, the barrier gradually weakened. One reason was the high priest's old age. Because of this, they decided to travel to different places to seek help from those with special abilities. When they visited villages, they carefully noted details about healers and charmers mentioned by those they questioned. The old man confessed that they had sought help from 20 charmers, but all were killed by the Agtaw. "I'm not telling you this to discourage you, Berto. I just want to be honest with you so you know what to expect. Don't worry. We will help as much as we can," the old man said after sharing everything. Because of this, his father had no choice but to join them. After gathering all their necessary items, they left the village to meet the others. As they walked, the old man mentioned that they were only looking for 5 charmers at that time, including Ardas' father, because of his past experience with the Agtaw. Before we continue the story, we ask for a small favor. We encourage you to subscribe and like this video to help us grow this channel and motivate us to upload more videos. Also, click the bell icon to be the first to know about our upcoming videos. Now let's continue. The other 4 were also shamans with extraordinary abilities. The old man explained that if it weren't for the incident, he wouldn't have had the chance to meet his clan. As their conversation continued, they learned more about the village they were heading to. According to the old man's story, because the village had been surrounded by the barrier for decades, many changes had occurred. He compared it to the world of enchantments that existed within the human world. He confessed that the Agtaw they were facing were different, but their abilities remained the same. After 2 more days of their journey, they finally reached the meeting place. When the father and son came upon a giant tree, they saw a group of shamans in identical clothing. Among them were 4 who stood out from the rest. After spotting them, they quickly approached. Facing the group, Ardas first noticed a shaman holding a blazing fire amulet. Another one had a living snake amulet that never left its bearer's body at any time. Among the shamans was a man holding a sword with crocodile-like teeth embedded in its handle. Arda's father believed it wasn't made for ordinary use. The last one they noticed was a man with long green hair and pointed ears, who had exceptionally beautiful skin and a youthful face. Ardas guessed he was only 18 years old, but when they asked, they learned he was over 100 years old. It was hard to believe, but once Arda's father confirmed that he was a pure spirit, they had no choice but to believe his story. During their conversation, the four shared many plans, outlining what they would do after the war to make it clear to the shamans. Ardas and his father remained silent, avoiding speaking because they knew that the human tongue was prone to sin. Repeatedly expressing their desires could lead them astray without realizing it. According to Ardas, such a curse was called the whisper of the devil by his father. After a few hours, they decided to travel further. From their meeting place, they traversed the vast forest to reach the mountains surrounded by towering trees. Upon arrival, they immediately spotted a dome hidden among the tree branches. According to their local guide, it was one of the barriers created by their shaman. As they observed it, they noticed how thin it had become, indicating it might not last another year. Entering the area, they were astonished by the sudden transformation of the surroundings. Instead of a forest, the place was filled with large rocks, resembling a barrier. Please excuse what you see. Our shaman is a nature spirit, so these are the results of his mystical knowledge. He feels at peace in such a place, so he chose this to hide and protect our home, said the old man with them. Hours passed, and as expected, they reached the village. Before they could enter, they were greeted by winged snakes. Many children, already holding amulets at a young age, also approached them. As they continued to observe, they noted the beauty and joy enveloping the place. However, when Ardas looked ahead, he saw claws and fangs of creatures trying to break in. The shamans guarding the area were ready for whatever might happen. Describing the creatures, Ardas noted they looked like demons with wolf-like faces, buffalo-like skin, and feet seemingly designed for high jumps. After observing this, an old man approached Ardas and whispered, "Return to your father. Don't look at that place, and don't even think about approaching it." With this warning, he complied. The day passed, and after their group had rested well, they planned their next move against the creatures. They discovered that the creatures had not changed form for a long time, possibly becoming beast-minded beings. The creatures' only desire was to enter the place, following their leader's orders. After learning about these events, Amani Berto didn't hesitate to reveal everything he knew. As he spoke, he kept gathering the ingredients he used to create protective charms. According to his father, simple ingredients were the main defense against the creatures. These included a cross made of palm leaves blessed on Good Friday and salt from Mount Banahaw. He added that combining the two would create a strong presence that could dissolve the spirits of the creatures. However, it couldn't destroy their bodies, only the spirit within. He also mentioned that their supplies were limited, so they needed to use them sparingly. After sharing this, one by one, the four other shamans took their share. Then they discussed their plan in detail. As night fell, they immediately left the barrier, armed with their weapons. Because one of them had a fire amulet, they had light even in the deep darkness of the night. Upon reaching the village entrance, they saw countless creatures gathered. At the far end, a sorcerer rode on the creatures' backs. Seeing this, the old man shared that the sorcerer was weakening. Despite the old man's declining strength, he persisted in giving orders, believing he would be the first to die before the shaman, Kezarito. After revealing this, the old man told them not to fear the creatures. In every darkness, there is a light. After saying these words, the old man let out a loud scream, attracting the creatures' attention. Seeing them, the creatures quickly charged. In their overwhelming numbers, the creatures looked like moving shadows with glowing red eyes. In response, The shaman with the fire amulet used the combined power of salt and palm leaves for an effective attack. As he continued, they saw the creatures slowly being consumed by fire. However, due to their tough skin, it wasn't enough to penetrate their systems. Seeing this, Ardas' father charged with full force, accompanied by other healers who joined them. During the ongoing battle, the surrounding trees nearly fell due to the strength of their shaman companions. The area was engulfed in flames, forcing the creatures to retreat slightly. After hours of fighting, Ardas' father noticed the old man had suddenly disappeared. Moments later, while fending off creatures that tried to corner him, he was startled by a loud scream. Looking at the cart where the sorcerer was, he saw the old man raising the creature's severed head. After beheading the creature, the old man just smiled, waiting for the creatures to attack him from behind. Unfortunately, the old man didn't survive, but his actions left an unmatched hope for their family. Due to these events, Ardas' companions, despite their exhaustion, were compelled to fight. Some no longer cared if they died, as long as they could free their home. Thankfully, after the sorcerer's death, the creatures scattered. Without anyone to follow orders from, they no longer united. By the time it was 1 a.m, Ardas' father and his companions had defeated the remaining creatures. Many lives were lost, but it wasn't in vain as they achieved victory. When the shaman learned of the events, he immediately lowered the barrier. After doing so, the old man weakened further, passing away a week later. Upon learning this, Ardas' father returned to the place to pay their respects. The old man's relatives accepted it, knowing he had endured for a long time, maintaining the barrier to ensure their safety. Months passed, and Ardas never returned to the village. They received no news, so they continued with their lives. To this day, as a healer like his late father, Ardas still remembers the story of the ancient barrier of the shaman against the creatures. What do you think about the story? Please comment below, and I will be happy to read it. For those who want a shout out, just comment #MerzeroNight.